Chapter 1. What was your mom like? My mom was born in 1916 in Hillary, Illinois. They later moved to Moran's Addition on the west side of town. That's where she lived when she attended Danville High School and also graduated from there in 1936. My mother's older sister Ruby had a daughter Joyce, who is my cousin and is 10 years older than me. I asked Joyce to contribute to this story since she knew my mother from before I was born. She did write some of her memories of her, and they are included here. My Auntie Faith was a bright light in my very uneventful childhood. Some of my happiest memories was the summer that she lived with my mother and me. She and I would take the bus downtown twice a week. First on our schedule was the Fannie Mae shop for a bag of candy. Next, we'd make a beeline for the Fisher. We wanted to get there before the movie started so we could listen to the organ. After the show, we would go across the street to have a snack at Kurt Weier's drugstore. The Palace was next on our agenda, a double feature and Milk Duds. We'd get out just in time to catch the last bus. After spending the weekend at the Waldorf with Van Johnson, having fun with the Bowery Boys and helping Randolph Scott clean up the West, it was back to the reality of William Street. Auntie Faith was always good to me. When she came back from her honeymoon, she brought me a lovely dress. It's still my favorite. Won't be too long till we see each other again. Hope she'll be happy to see me, as I will to see her. Joyce. There is a lot of information that I have gained from Joyce about my mother. Some of it I had no knowledge of until just recently. I would like to add this history of my mother so that it can be passed along. Knowing about the years of my mother's life before I was born means a lot to me. She never talked about this part of her life with me. In 1939, Ura Faith Graves married Byron Lester Ruthven. He was called Les. Les was 11 years older than Faith. He had been married before and had a daughter named Mary Ellen. Joyce thinks that her mother died shortly after May Ellen was born. She then lived with her grandmother. Les and Faith lived in apartments for a few years, then moved into their house on Grove Street in Danville. They both worked at a factory called Prouty's. Les was also a musician and was well known in the music circles, and was friends with Ralph Palmer, my dad. Joyce and Faith spent much time together at that time. Her description of her Auntie Faith was that she was so elegant, that she always dressed in fancy clothes and wore the finest perfumes. This sounds like someone I would want to be around. I love the way that Joyce talks about her, and it sounds like Faith was ready for a child of her own. One night, Les was at a union member meeting, being the treasurer. He left the meeting with his briefcase and was hit in the head by an attacker who stole the briefcase for whatever money might have been inside. Les died from his wounds. This was in July of 1945. Faith took it very hard. She did get a sum of money from life insurance. This part of her life she kept to herself. As I said, she never told me anything except that she had been married before she married my dad. It only took till October 16th of that same year for Faith and Ralph to get married. I'm sure that they had known each other for several years. I still have some of the letters that they sent back and forth to each other at that time, and you can certainly tell that they were madly in love with each other and were dedicating their lives to one another. There was also some conversation I had recently with my cousin Imogene Kennelly Childress. She is the oldest living relative on my dad's side of the family. She's a few years older than Joyce, and she lived in the house next to the one I grew up in on Dale Avenue. She remembers when my mom and dad bought the house. It was in the winter of 1945 and 46. She remembers that there were renters living in the house at the time it was purchased. When I read some of the letter that my mother wrote to my dad at the time, my mom really wanted them to move out and they were dragging their feet. Finally, they moved into their home, the home that they would have until their final days. Imogene also said that she vividly remembers the inside of the house. The furniture that they bought was so beautiful. It was all new and the style was very elegant. It was Duncan Phyfe style. Joyce says it was not very comfortable, and after a few years it was traded out for a more comfortable style, and that is the furniture I remember. Then, November 17th, 1946. I came into their world. I think I was what my wonderful mother had been longing for many years. She no longer was a working wife. She was a stay-at-home mother. This is the mother I knew, dedicated to raising, protecting, cherishing, nurturing, and spoiling her only son, Dennis Allen. Her arthritis had given her less mobility year by year. Even with her stiff fingers, she had a great gift for crocheting and knitting. She made some wonderful doilies and afghans. I still have these today and cherish them, and I hope they outlast me. My mom passed away in 1986 from complication of rheumatoid arthritis. She had been confined to her bed for several years. I wish I could have one more day with her to tell her how much I love her. Here I am again, wiping back tears,